بسم الله والحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على سيد الأنبياء والمرسلين وبعد. Tonight the Hufaz will be reciting from the 10th juz, which consists of two parts. The first part is the completion of Surah Al-Anfal, wherein Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala discusses the battle of Badr, the events that preceded it, and some general exhortations to strive in the path of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Then we begin with Surah At-Tawbah, one of the last surahs to be revealed in Medina, among the last surahs to be revealed in Medina, which was revealed after the Battle of Tabuk, when the mushrikun had broken their promise, broken their pact with the Sahaba and Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. There are a number of important verses throughout where Allah talks about unity. Allah reminds us of the status of the Sahaba, particularly Abu Bakr radiyallahu ta'ala an. I want to focus on a few verses. Right in the beginning, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, يَا أَيُّهَا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا أَطِيعُوا اللَّهَ وَرَسُولَهُ وَلَا تَنَازَعُوا فَتَفْشَلُوا وَتَذْهَبَ رِيحُكُمْ. And this is a very powerful reminder where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, O you who believe, obey Allah and His Messenger, and do not quarrel among yourselves. Because if you will quarrel among yourself, you will destroy and exert all of your energy, you will become weak, and then those external forces out of your community will take advantage of the moment and will break your ummah apart. This is a very important lesson for all of us in this particular context as well. If the Sahaba radiallahu anhum in the thick of the Battle of Badr began to disagree with one another, they're already few in number, and the opposing army is much larger in number. If even a few of them did not see eye to eye, their focus, their objectives were not the same, they would have eventually broken into splinter groups, and this would have been enough for the opposing army to completely decimate them. And that's what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَلَا تَنَازَعُوا فَتَفْشَلُوا وَتَذْهَبَ رِيحُكُمْ. وَاصْبِرُوا, be patient. The moment you see somebody else in your community with whom you may have a slight disagreement, somebody who you're not able to see eye to eye, when the ummah is already being externally under attack, do not take advantage of that moment to throw each other under the bus. Yes, if circumstances are dire and there's a need to expose faulty, immoral, incorrect behavior, that's a separate story. But oftentimes we find ourselves disagreeing and fighting with each other over things that are so petty, that are so insignificant, that instead of causing goodness, we're causing more harm to ourselves. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَلَا تَنَازَعُوا. Don't start arguing and fighting over things that historically there's already a difference of opinion. And nowadays, what's a little unfortunate is you have so many groups of people even online. One group of people, they're the type who don't even care about their deen, which is one of the worst concerns. But then there are people who are very over-passionate, overzealous about small issues, and it becomes a catalyst to completely divide the community. And we have to be very careful about this, because we're not in a time where we have the luxury of disagreeing with one another over these small issues. That's the first verse. The second verse, right after that, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَإِذْ زَيَّنَ لَهُمُ الشَّيْطَانُ أَعْمَالَهُمْ وَقَالَ لَا غَالِبَ لَكُمُ الْيَوْمِ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Shaitan is a very tricky, he's a very sneaky creation of Allah. He's very tricky. What does this mean? Whenever a person is tempted to do something, Shaitan comes and embellishes, beautifies that thing in their mind. وَقَالَ لَا غَالِبَ لَكُمُ الْيَوْمَ مِنَ النَّاسِ وَإِنِّي جَارٌ لَكُمْ. Whenever we want to do something wrong, shaitan comes and sprinkles and beautifies a lot of what we don't even realize to be good or bad, and shaitan completely misguides us. But what does he do? He makes it look beautiful. The analogy of this is, imagine somebody has food that has gone off. Some food that is expired. It's weeks and weeks old. It's covered in mold. What will shaitan do? He will take the food, he'll take it out from its package, and he'll repackage it in something very beautiful and something very delicious, something that looks really appealing. And then he'll serve it to us. وَإِذْ زَيَّنَ لَهُمُ الشَّيْطَانِ. And he will say after that, وَإِنِّي جَارٌ لَكُمْ. Don't worry, you try some, I'm going to try right after you. وَإِنِّي جَارٌ لَكُمْ. I'm right next to you. You take a bite, you enjoy your fill. When you're done, give it to me, I'm also going to have some too. فَلَمَّا تَرَاءَتِ الْفِئَتَانِ نَكَصَ عَلَى عَقِبَيْهِ. And then, when the battle begins, when your internal strife begins, نَكَصَ عَلَى عَقِبَيْهِ. He's the first person to desert you. نَكَصَ عَلَى عَقِبَيْهِ وَقَالَ إِنِّي بَرِيءٌ مِنْكُمْ. He says, I have nothing to do with this. And this is what happened in the time of the Battle of Badr. But this is something that we witness in our lives today. We have our phone, we're itching to do something that we shouldn't. We're with a group of friends we shouldn't be around, and they want to do something that's unhealthy. Shaitan is going to be the first person to come and whisper and say, listen, everybody else is doing it, why don't you do it? What's the harm? We're weak people. And then he's beautifying it. He's taking this expired food, this unhealthy food, and then he's presenting it to us in the most beautiful way, and we're tempted. But the moment we take the first bite, we get sick, we feel uncomfortable, and we're wondering, where's this person who said he's going to help us? He's gone. نَكَسَ عَلَى عَقِبَيْهِ. We have to be very mindful and very particular that shaitan can abuse and put us in situations where he promises certain things and we're able to beautify it, and then all of a sudden he's gone. Later on in Surah At-Tawbah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, يُرِيدُونَ أَن يُطْفِئُوا نُورَ اللَّهِ بِأَفْوَاهِهِمْ وَيَأْبَى اللَّهُ إِلَّا أَن يُتِمَّ نُورَهُ. This is a verse Allah repeats many times. That the people who have enmity in their hearts for Islam, يُرِيدُونَ أَن يُطْفِئُوا نُورَ اللَّهِ بِأَفْوَاهِهِم. What they're trying to do is, when they see the light of Allah, when they see the light of Islam, they're trying to spit onto that fire so that they can extinguish that fire. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَيَأْبَى اللَّهُ إِلَّا أَن يُتِمَّ نُورَهُ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will not allow you to extinguish the fire of Islam. One of the things we're noticing these days is people are coming into Islam in droves. From the ordinary average people to influential people to athletes and celebrities, people who are now seeing the beauty of Islam and they're saying La ilaha illallah and they're taking the shahada. And there are so many people who, subhanallah, they're unable to cope with this reality because their entire life's mission has been to talk negatively about Islam. I don't like to get into specifics, but just to give you one example of an Islamophobe, his name is Sam Harris. Maybe the younger professionals amongst us may know him. His entire life was dedicated to talk negatively about Islam. And in one interview, somebody is talking to him and said, you see all of these people accepting Islam, all these influential people, and you as an individual, your whole life's mission is to talk negatively about Islam. How do you feel? And subhanAllah, anybody seeing that interview would see that it was like he was about to cry. He felt helpless. يُرِيدُونَ أَن يُطْفِئُوا نُورَ اللَّهِ بِأَفْوَاهِهِمْ. His entire life was to tell people Islam is irrational, Islam is violent, Islam is unfair to women. But anybody who reads the Quran, anybody who interacts with Muslims, anybody who understands Islam with a clean heart is going to be drawn into Islam. وَيَأْبَى اللَّهُ إِلَّا يُتِمَّ نُورَهُ. You can try, you can cry. And as they say, use your tears to try and extinguish the fire of Allah, but nothing's ever going to happen. إِلَّا يُتِمَّ نُورَهُ. There's a lot that can be said in the verses that will be recited tonight. But the key points, 3 things, let's bear them in mind. Number 1, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is imploring us time and again, let's try to stay united. Let's try to hold on to the rope of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and let's not let go, because that is our lifeline. Number 2, whenever we feel tempted to do something inappropriate, remember, the temptation gets beautified, embellished by shaitan, and the moment I suffer the negative consequences, shaitan is gone. And the last thing is, in a time where everyone's attacking Islam, where people are undermining Islam, they can try to extinguish the light of Allah, but if it's Allah's promise to protect and preserve Islam, Islam will be preserved. And despite the PR, despite the negative propaganda and press, people will accept Islam even quicker because that is the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala inspire us with the truth. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala keep us united. May Allah protect us from the ploys of shaitan. And may Allah continue to illuminate His light. Ameen ya Rabbil Alameen. Jazakumullah.